Hey everyone, it's Heather Nichols. I have a set of cards to share with you today that I created with the Make a Splash background. I also use my MISTI, which is one of my most invaluable stamping tools, along with a few new accessories from Tailored Expressions that'll step up your stamping experience. Today's project all starts with the MISTI, and I use the MISTI 2.0. You'll notice I have a grid paper in there that might look a little different than what you have seen before. We collaborated with My Sweet Petunia to create our own grid paper. It's printed in teal, of course, and has card guides on it for A2 sizes and mini slim. I'll be using a MISTI clear alignment panel. I have 3 of them here in different sizes with a grid on it. There's actually 4 in the set. These are great for getting things lined up perfectly with your stamping. I have one of the new pickup stickers wrapped around my bar magnet from my MISTI. This durable vinyl sticker wraps right around the outside and makes picking up your magnet very easy. And finally, for MISTI accessories is the new Just Press tool. I'll show you how this works to stamp with your MISTI in just a little bit. For the cards I'm making today, I'm using the Make a Splash background stamp, along with the Floaties stamp set and the coordinating dies. I'm using the Stitched Banner Stacklets die collection, the 3rd smallest size. I'm also using the Stitched Frame Stacklets 1 die collection, the 3rd smallest size in that set too. For ink colors, I'm using Oreo and Blue Raspberry in the large pads, and then in the ink cubes, I'm using Peapod, Cookie Monster, Poblano Pepper, and Spearmint. I'm using Copic markers for coloring, along with colored pencils to add shading and Gamsol to blend. My cards are shakers, and the filling I'm using is Snow Flurry sequins, clear drip drops, and white rhinestones. And for adhesive, I have 1/8 inch sticky tape and the foam sticky strips. I'm stamping the background for both of the cards first using the Make a Splash background. I've got my new grid paper in my MISTI, and I'll be using that A2 guide to set my cardstock into my MISTI. I added a little bit of adhesive to the grid paper to hold the cardstock in place. I set the stamp down on top of the cardstock and closed the lid of the MISTI to pick up the stamp. So now let's take a look at the Just Press tool. It's styled after a dry erase marker. It holds nicely in your hand and has a nice felt bottom to glide across the top of your MISTI really easily. So I'll ink up this stamp. This is going to be a tone-on-tone look with that blue raspberry ink on the blue raspberry cardstock. I'm inking that up, and I'll close the lid of the MISTI, and then I'll simply take the Just Press tool and I will press it over the top of the stamp. The nice flat bottom gives nice even pressure, and it's going to help stamp your larger images more effectively. You still may have to do an impression more than once, but it's going to be easier than pressing your hand, which is not flat, and using this flat surface to apply an even pressure. And you don't have to press hard, you just press exactly like it says on the Just Press tool. Don't stress, just press. All right, now let's do a second background, and this time I'm using Sugar Cube cardstock, and I'll set that right into the A2 guide on the grid paper. I'm inking up my Make a Splash stamp for this background using ink cubes to stamp it in multiple colors. I have Peapod, Spearmint, Poblano Pepper, and Cookie Monster. Once I've used the mini ink cubes to ink up my stamp, I'll close the lid of the MISTI and use my Just Press tool once again to apply pressure to the stamp. I'll do a second impression once again to make sure that my image is crisp and clear. These 2 backgrounds are finished, so let's move on to the next step. I'm stamping a few of the images from the Floaties stamp set, and I'll stamp those in Oreo ink on Sugar Cube cardstock. I'm setting my Sugar Cube cardstock up in my MISTI, and I'm going to show you the new pickup stickers that you can add to your bar magnet. The vinyl sticker strips have a marked part in the middle, and this is where you're going to add it to the side of your magnet. So you can line that right up, and then you're going to fold that sticker over and stick it to itself on the other side of the magnet. That creates a tab, and that's what you can use to pick your magnet up from your MISTI. I'm using that magnet to hold the Sugar Cube cardstock in place while I stamp the images from the Floaties set in Oreo ink. I like to color my images with Copic markers and Prismacolor pencils. I'll lay down a solid layer of Copic marker color first, then I'll add shading with the colored pencil and blend that out with Gamsol and paper stumps. I'll play a little music and zoom you through the rest of my coloring. Once my images were colored, I cut them out with the coordinating dies and my Sidekick die cutting machine. I also cut out 2 frames using the Stitched Frames Stacklets 1 die collection. This is the 3rd smallest frame, and I cut them out from Poblano pepper cardstock. The frames are going to be a part of the shaker element on my card, and so I am adding a piece of acetate behind the frame to close that opening off. I'm adhering it in place with the 1/8 inch wide sticky tape. Before I add the shaker elements to the cards, I'm adding the backgrounds to the card bases. I did both card bases from Poblano pepper cardstock. Next, I went back to the frames and I added the foam sticky strips to the backs of them to create the shaker elements. The foam sticky strips need to be added all the way around the frame, and you need to close up any of the gaps so that none of the shaker filling leaks out. I made a small pile of shaker filling on the middle of each card. My shaker filling consists of snow flurry sequins, clear drip drops, and white rhinestones. Once I had the filling that I needed on each card, I took the paper backing off of the backs of the frames and adhered them right over the tops of the shaker filling piles. The last thing that I need to add to my cards are sentiments, and I'm going to stamp my sentiments onto Stitched Banner Stacklets die cuts. I cut the banners out from Toffee cardstock. To make sure my sentiment is stamped onto my banner die cut straight, I'll be using a clear alignment panel. There are 4 panels in the set. 3 of them have grids stamped on them. 2 are sized to fit inside the MISTI, and you have an A2 size and a mini slim size. I chose to use the A2 size for my project. I'm just going to set this panel right on top of the grid paper, line it up with the grid underneath, and hold it in place with a little bit of tape. Next, I'm going to stamp my sentiment directly on the panel, and I'm going to be able to see if that is straight by lining it up with the grid lines. If the sentiment does not stamp straight, I'll readjust the stamp and try again until I have it lined up the way that I want it. To stamp the sentiment onto the die cut banner, I'm adding a little bit of adhesive to the back of the banner and then sliding it underneath that panel so I can line that up. I'm lining the die cut up with the grid so it's straight, and I also can see exactly where the sentiment is going to stamp. When things are lined up, I'll press the banner so that it sticks to the grid paper. I'll flip up the panel, ink up the stamp, and stamp the sentiment onto my banner. I added the critters to the ends of the banners. I did trim the banners just a little bit so that the critters were close next to the sentiments. Then I'll add the banners right to the front of the shaker elements on each of the cards, and these cards are done. I hope you enjoyed my projects, and I hope you learned a little bit more about the new MISTI tools that you can use to step up your stamping experience. You can find the new MISTI tools and the supplies that I used to create this project at tailoredexpressions.com. Thanks so much for joining me, everybody, and I'll see you next time.